Hello, everyone. So we're going to assume that this live is working. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time checking that. I'm going to give it a minute or so for people to start to join, and then we're going to discuss our topic. Once again, energies have been crazy. I've been changing my appearance a little bit. Got a haircut today, and got my beard shaven off, and I'm back to just just the goatee. So, where shall we begin? So, I know everyone's been going through a lot of challenges lately, me especially. Stuff showing up, people getting in my face, getting into poking me sometimes, having a lot of dreams right now about stuff that's limiting me, and going into the energy of those situations and kind of blasting it apart with my heart. I don't know how else to describe that, but it's basically releasing me from stuff that's trapped in my system, has been made present or dormant in there for a long time, and I didn't even know it was there. So I'm going to guarantee that a lot of us are having the exact same issues, and this is probably happening to you, something similar. And it's normal, but just trying to give some guidance of how to start to unwind it. So let's begin by this. So I'm going to tell you that anything that's bothering you or is recurrent in your thoughts, in your system, in patterns that keep happening in your life is a clue to something inside of yourself. So you can sit there and say one way and say, oh, I'm just a victim to all this. This keeps happening over and over and over again. And it's the universe not wanting me or whatever. You can build this little story inside yourself that makes it continue to happen. So I can talk about lots in my world. Relationships are a good one. I avoided relationship most of my life until 30 years old. I met the woman that I ended up marrying, and we were married for 15 years before a divorce happened. And that's not the topic here, but starting to look into my relationships, and I could see as I've grown over the last 8+ years since my divorce, the relationships I went into were patterns. I had what I would call a wounded mother. She doesn't want me to get into the details of it anymore, but my mother had some traumas before I was born. And when I came into my life, I wanted to fix my mom and make her feel better so that I could feel unconditional love from my mom. And that created a whole bunch of patterns and problems in my life. And after my divorce, and I started searching for women in my life, I'd always attract what I would at that time consider wounded women. But I'm also now reflecting back, and I'm seeing that I had a wounded child of my own. That part of me never grew up. That man part wanted as a child and gave all his love to his mother so that he could feel unconditional love, and it was never possible because that was her journey and this was my journey, and I didn't know any better. And as a child, I thought I could fix it and just give all my love and all my energy and stuff to her. But now, as I'm growing more aware and that inner child is growing up, that wounded woman profile no longer serves, and I'm not trying to heal my mother in every woman that I've welcomed into my life. So as I become more and more aware, at one point I was like, oh, why does this keep happening to me? And look at all this crap that's going on. But it was mine to own. It wasn't the woman's fault or whatever. I just picked up like vibrations. So as I become more and more aware, I started to see my patterns inside the wounded child, the wanting to feel love and just giving and giving and giving, and never even giving a chance for the woman to send love back. So all these patterns started to grow, and my anger and my frustration every time about just getting the same pattern over and over and over again is something that I eventually had to look at, and I had to see my part in that. And it wasn't easy. Trust me, it was fucking insane. And I thought I had curses, and I did in some regards, because some of the people that I invited into my life, that was their fix for everything, was just to curse everyone and make it their problem. But you only partner up with people of like vibration. So what ends up happening, two people come together of like vibration, and they resonate at the same frequency. So you create the same patterns. That same pattern happens to them as well as yourself. And you end up in this situation where you kind of poke each other, and eventually out of it has to be some growth, or else you just kind of push them away, or some crash happens in the relationship and you just say, I'm not going to deal with that anymore. Oh, it's not my fault, etc. But each time I did that, the next person that would show up in my life would be that exact same pattern. So as I started to get stronger, and it trained me, it taught me these things. It set me to set up boundaries. When they started hacking and slashing and being really angry and frustrated, I'd learned to say, okay, this isn't valuing me. This is hurting me. Your past trauma is projecting on me. I'd love to talk. Speak to me. But you won't talk to me like that. You won't hurt me. You won't harm me or hit me or whatever. And then it created a boundary and a safe space. And then I could start speaking more about my side of it. Okay, you're saying this and I'm feeling this, and I don't believe it belongs to me because we didn't share this energy. Why are you saying that? And then a lot of times it would be, we'd move forward, but also a lot of times that would just be like a slap in the face to them that I wasn't being the dad or the person that hurt them, and using that energy. And as I'm walking away, they're getting angrier and angrier and angrier because I don't have to participate in that. Yeah, we shared an energy, but I didn't cause that. It's not my job to heal that. So I learned inside of me that I didn't have to just accept anything that was thrown at me because that's all I was worthy of. I learned self-love. It's like, okay, hold on. You're not going to talk like that. Either we're going to have a conversation or I'm going to step away. And that was powerful. I don't know how many situations where I've been in an experience like that, and all of a sudden I have the power. And now as I've grown through that, those wounds were really hard, and I'd sit after the relationship and just sit in a ball almost in tears, wondering what the hell's happening. Why in the hell can't I meet my twin flame? Why? But I also learned at that same time, I'd given up so much of myself through societal stuff, through trying to love that mom that had a wound and never receiving it. It created this, I don't know, like this pattern inside of me that just said that's all I was worthy of, and that's all I could get, and I'd have to live with it, and I'd have to just kind of stick my ass in the air so my ass could get kicked, because that's all I was worthy of. But soon I started to realize that there was parts of my beliefs, of the way I was raised, my religion, other things, the wounding that was in my lineage that came through my mother, that kind of forced me to that. And as I became aware of these things, in each time, those low spots afterwards, it was like, okay, what's underneath? I said in the post, and what's bothering you, the thing that you hate the most, or you see in other people that just drives you nuts, is the very thing that you're trying to learn for yourself. So if you're getting clues that person really just drives me nuts, they're an asshole, or whatever, there's one of two things. Either you're exerting those patterns towards other people, it's coming mirrored out through the other people, or you're learning to stand up to that pattern so that you can create new boundaries and move forward. Now, this is a very beautiful thing to see from the outside, but from the inside, it's insidious and it's painful and it's uncomfortable, because you're being forced, like it's kind of like a cheese grater being exerted on the backs of your knuckles all day long. It's like, geez, these things are bothering me. Why do they keep showing up in my life and all this kind of stuff? It's a soul contract that you created in a lot of cases. If it's a person or a relationship or whatever, before you came to this life, you found other souls that wanted to have the same experience, and you made an agreement and said, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to have this relationship. Yes, you're going to be in this state, and yes, she's going to be in that state, but we're going to go into it. And those relationships are the points where we're most meant to learn. So like a marriage relationship or whatever, can you imagine you're marrying your exact opposite, and that's attracting you because your vibrations are so similar. And you go into this relationship, and it starts with a honeymoon phase and all this kind of stuff, and then you start grading on each other. The cheese grater starts to go as time goes on, and the sex is whatever, and you're judging each other, and eventually you get to a point where there's this kind of like butting of heads. And there's two ways that it can go. You can either just kind of toe in and just give up part of yourself and not go through those lessons and just kind of just accept, okay, this is marriage and this is how this happens. Or you can start to look inward and say, okay, what's going on here? Why does this hurt? Why does this not feel good? And you can start to grow your inner child. And if you can negotiate with your partner to have intimacy of conversation, sharing vulnerability of what's hurting and what your childhood is, this can be really, really powerful, because you create this container where you can start looking through things and figuring stuff out together. But a lot of times the marriage doesn't allow that. It's like, okay, the sexuality starts to break up, the stuff, the arguments, you build up resentments and passive aggressiveness towards your partner until eventually you don't want to be with them anymore, and you really blame them, and it's blamed outside ourselves instead of taking responsibility. So what I've found in my experience is relationships are the most powerful ways of learning about ourselves, because we let a person in, we become sexual with them, we become loving with them, we become vulnerable and intimate, and then we start talking about our stuff and sharing experiences that might be headbutting. But as you get underneath, and the secret that I've learned is the more vulnerable you can be, the more you can talk about it, the more you can create a container of understanding between two people, the more value is going to come for both. Because just remember that either you have the same trauma when you're attracted. The attraction that most of us feel in relationships are two people with similar vibrational levels. And if you got a bunch of wounds and a bunch of problems going on, you're going to attract somebody that's either the opposite of that, so that they're going to poke you hard, or it's somebody that has the very same thing, and you're going to be able to understand each other and work your way through it. So if you look back at your relationships, you're going to see this, that you had people that were there and brought in divinely to poke you in just the right spots, so that you could either work through it and move forward, or you could blow up into a million pieces and scream and yell at them and push them away. Kind of like a lot of people hear about twin flames and how they have a repulsion and the runner and all that kind of stuff. This is the same thing can happen in just any old relationship too. So as we're looking at this stuff, I also believe that it's important to have kind of like a safe zone, or a separate bedroom, or your two separate apartments if you're in a relationship that's not married yet. So you can kind of go back and lick your wounds and say, okay, why did this bother me? Why did this hurt? Why did this pain? Because if you're sleeping in the same bed or in the same house, sometimes it's the energy never diffuses enough, and things fall apart. So you came here as a soul to learn certain things as your soul, to clean up genetic lineages and epigenetic lineages in your past, to clean up past karma things, all these kind of things. We're now working through all of these things. It's like a pressure cooker saying, okay, solve all this stuff. You got to figure it out. So you're getting poked all the time by people. And certain people are coming into your life just to poke you. Other people are coming into your life because they need to be poked. And there's this big, grand experience of people learning themselves and learning their flaws and learning the stuff that's holding them back. And you draw in these people and these crazy experiences, and you start to understand and become aware of what's underneath of your whys. Why do I do that? Why do my subconscious keep causing this? Why do I keep drawing these kind of people into my life? Why do I keep having problems with landlords? That's something that's in my life. And to me, I'm learning it's a boundaries thing. It's like, okay, the landlord doesn't automatically get free will over everything that you do. My last landlord all of a sudden moved back out of the blue and then told me I couldn't have alcohol in the house because that was against his religion. Fuck off. Yeah, maybe it is, but if that's not in the lease agreement or decided before I come, or I get a bad stare when I brought a female friend into my bedroom that I was paying full price for, and I could hear him at the door or listening to us, and it was just like, no fucking way. I paid my full rent, and whatever I do in my room, whether your religion says it's okay or not, you opened your house to to a space of meldedness, etc. No, you don't get those choices. You don't whatever. But how do you have that conversation with a person? I had to have some hard conversations. I had to stand in my boundaries and stand up for myself, or I could have just sat there as a freaking prisoner in this room that I paid full price for because that guy did not honor and respect that other people had their own lives and their own needs and didn't have the same religion as you, etc. And you don't get to just blindly tell people that this is what you can and can't do just because you're a landlord. And I know that that's a huge past life thing for me, that I had a landlord that took advantage of me and made me into a slave because of it. So touchy business. I'm working with shit that's really scary and strong inside my system. And then I'm bringing all these experiences. I've had probably 4 bad experiences with landlords, but every time having to stand in my power, take them to court, fucking stand up when their conversations and they're pushing and other things when I had an agreement that says I could stay there as long as I want until the lease was over, and they're pushing me to give a date so that they can move back in or whatever. Not my freaking problem. If you keep pushing me, I'll just stay here as long as I like. And then they backed right off. But having to learn to stand in that power, open my voice, open my throat chakra, those are all things that help me grow, that help me stand up, now helps me with every situation. Any authority figure that shows up in my life, any of those kind of things are now as a result of all these really weird experiences. Even my relationship experiences with women. It's like being forward about, I teach people about sexuality. Sexuality is important to me. So if this is something that you're going to wait until we're married for or whatever, I can't marry a person that I can't be sexually compatible with. And I have to know that through being with that person. I'm over 50 years old. I'm not waiting around to spend 2 years courting a person or whatever. And people that want to court each other for all that time and do all that kind of stuff, great. But touch and intimacy and sexuality and pleasure are really important parts that I didn't have earlier in my life. So I'm going to be really forward and direct and say this is something that I want, and more than likely they want. But if they don't, I'm sure want to get that information out in the beginning so that nobody's surprised. And it's just one, I wouldn't even say hard conversation. It's a direct conversation. It can be uncomfortable, but if that other person is not feeling comfortable and having a discussion on that topic, it's probably more than likely we weren't going to continue. So you can start to see how all these experiences that we judge as bad or as we're a victim of, or this keeps happening and whatever, is all divinely created. And sometimes you're not going to see this or be aware of it until afterwards. And that's the joy and the beauty of it, is to get through it and then say, holy shit, I really like this person I am. Look at the power I have. Look at the self-esteem that I have, the self-worth, the ability to have hard conversations, and to not engage when there's no value to me, or step away. Like the last situation with my landlord, it was like, he wasn't going to understand all this stuff. This was part of his patterns. So I had to make a choice and have to make a move, but to get the hell out of there. And thank God, because all the weirdness that came afterwards and trying to charge me for stuff that wasn't even true or real, because he was hurt and wounded because I was standing in integrity and he wasn't. You see all these things, and then your world changes, because now you don't need to attract people that are going to give you that lesson anymore. You don't need to keep going into the hole of all this shit and redredge it, because you made the hard decisions, you made the hard choices, you sat in the emotions, you sat in all this kind of stuff, and you don't even know where you're limited. There's so much that came from our religion, came from our parents, came from past traumas, etc., that have limited your ability to create, limited your belief in what's possible for you, limited your abundance, limited the type of partner you can attract, etc. So we came here to be taught, to learn lessons, and we created them for ourselves. And I'm going to tell you right now, the hardest lessons, the one that grate our heart and knuckles and hurt the most, and just smash us onto the ground and cause us to have addictions and cause us to have all these things, are the things that are forming and shaping our soul and changing the collective and shifting reality, and stuff that's been going on for thousands or tens of thousands or millennia that we thought was the best that we could have. When we're actually gods in creation, we don't even know where our limits are. So we created these really sometimes nasty, complex, really emotional situations to teach us. And eventually, once we can see underneath, we grow. And once we move forward with all that stuff, magic happens. So this is the process. Looking underneath at what bothers you will change everything. You're going to find out that things that once bothered you, once you've worked through the energy that's associated to them, things like respect and all this kind of stuff, you're going to look at them afterwards and say, okay, why was I ever even worried about that? Like, I'm sitting in my new apartment and I can hear the people banging around upstairs and beside and all this kind of stuff. Most of it doesn't bother me anymore. Before, it was like, holy shit, how come they have to be so noisy, and why can't they lift their feet and all this kind of stuff? But now it's just kind of like, okay, people are living around me. Why do I give any... They have no idea that they're clomping their feet and all that kind of stuff. They just do it, right? They're probably old or whatever. I don't know who's upstairs, but in the old me, I'd be just sitting here going sideways and wanting to go and knock on their door or whatever. But these things are showing up to say, okay, I've matured. I now know things, and I'm improving. But without these reflections, without these constant barrage of things to show you what's going on, you might not be aware. You might not know how much you've grown. And I'm going to guarantee anybody that's made it to this point, that's listening to this video, that's hearing this stuff, you've been through a lot. Because a lot of this is pretty advanced level stuff. Not that I'm better or whatever. It's just, if I look back at my life, I'd say I was a failure at relationships. I was a failure at abundance and success and all this kind of stuff. But now I got to this point, and none of those things really matter in the big flow of things. What really matters is how I see the world, how I create, how I deal with that victim mentality, the traumas, etc. That's what's formed and shaped me. Like, anybody that knew me 10 years ago, holy shit, I'm a completely different person. Even my confidence, even my power, even the way the light shines out of my eyes and comfort with my body and all this stuff all came from these master's levels of traumas, things going on in my life. And I'm grateful for all of it. And I forgive all of it. And I thank all of it for coming into my life, even though I thought I wasn't worthy and wasn't a whole bunch of other things. That was the only choice that I had back then, learning the lessons that I had to. But I am worthy. I have value. My time has value. I have an attractive body, attractive face, attractive whatever, where at other times in my life, I would have thought, oh, no, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. I've learned that. And I love who I am. And I love all the experiences I've had. And I love all the people that have come in and out of my life. And I talked about wounded children and wounded my own child or whatever. Well, I had to forgive my little child inside, and I forgive all of them. We learned so much together, and we did the best that we can with what we knew at the time. So I love you all, and just be aware that if it's hard, you're learning massively. And if you're stuck on something, you can't figure out what's underneath, come talk to me. Put a message down below. We'll have a chat. Because sometimes you just need somebody to shine a light on the thing that's hurting you the most, and you're going to find out that it was hiding in your shadow. And somebody just had to come, like a lighthouse or with a little searchlight, and say, hey, I see something in there. And then you'll ask a few questions. It's not my job to give people the answer, but say, hey, when I say this, what do you feel? They're like, okay, why do you feel that way? I don't know. Maybe let's give me a few minutes here or let's talk tomorrow or whatever. That's sometimes all we need to know what we're missing. what's underneath. So that's what I do, and I'm really good at it. And I do it for myself, and I do it for other people. And one of these days, I'll start putting up some of the comments and stuff with people that have had good, beautiful outcomes from just sitting down and having a little chat. So I love you all. Thank you for listening. This is a little longer one, but I think it was important. So you have a good day. We'll talk more soon, and love you. Bye.